If it's not fun, why bother?
Well, let me tell you why. The word fun is synonymous with video games, its culture, and the criticism surrounding it. It's safe to say that a lot of people will judge a game based on how much fun they've had when playing it. I'm not here to discount this method of games analysis, but I do have a few issues with it. I feel a big problem that gamers have is this one-track mind when describing why they enjoy a game. Because I believe a game can be engaging and good without it being fun, so to say, and I think a lot of people already agree. For me, the worst thing a game can do is not immerse the player. If you're still aware that you're playing a game in the middle of a session, it's already failed. Because instead of focusing on the task at hand, you're thinking about what you're going to eat that evening instead. But if you're playing a horror game, you can be stressed out and panicking and crying and shitting and coming and still have a great time. It's okay to say you didn't have fun with something and still enjoy it. I mean, I don't have fun playing horror games. I shit myself and I still really enjoy them. This isn't me shitting on games that aim to be solely fun, nor is it an attack on an industry that might have it as a primary focus. The only thing worse than people who think fun is the only valuable experience games can bring to the table are people who think joy and happiness are lower forms of expression in art. Just because your miserable short film about a starving French orphan makes everyone who watches it cry doesn't make it any better than the video game that puts the biggest, stupidest grin on anyone within its vicinity. The thing is, I want this to be a two-way street because I believe both of them are equally valid forms of art. The phrase, "if it's not fun, why bother," has been so detrimental to games criticism and the way people consume and think about what they play. The thing is, I absolutely agree with this statement for some games. I mean, especially the ones Nintendo makes, which is where it came from. You're not gonna find me calling Hotel Mario a postmodern masterpiece because it plays like a dyspraxic sloth with a hangover. But there are other ways to create games, and I think the word itself is misused when describing what makes some games good anyway. But people heard Reggie say something at E3 once and then took it as word of God, immediately dismissing any attempt at nuance for this conversation as pretentious bullshit. Speaking of pretentiousness, try to disagree with a comment on this video without calling me that, and keep that in the back of your head while we talk about art. Video games are art, and I don't think that's a big discussion anymore. It seems to be just the general consensus. If you disagree with me on this, then the video isn't for you, and I don't think I'm gonna sway your opinion on anything else. I'm not in the business of defining what art is or should be, but if I could give you my best explanation, I guess it would be something that someone has created with the intention of conveying an emotion. What emotion that is depends on the piece of art itself. Taking all that into account, games would be a pretty shitty art form if they could only convey one emotion well, right? And it would also be kinda stupid to judge a piece of art based on one of those emotions as well. What the hell? This isn't fun. Man, what a shitty movie. Of course, this is complete hyperbole. I'm not comparing Gone Home to a Holocaust movie. I'm not doing that. But you do get my point, right? Like, if you do think that games need to be fun to be good, I've got a few questions for you. Do you have fun while playing Papers, Please? Are you smiling while doing paperwork in an authoritarian society? Do you feel the same joy denying your family food that evening as you do when jumping over a Goomba in Mario? How about when you're close to throwing your controller at the TV because you're stuck on a particularly bullshit area or boss in Dark Souls? I'm not talking about the satisfaction you get from beating it, I'm talking about the hours of trial and error leading up to that point. Is the game not good at that specific point in time because you're not having fun with it? In which case, for most Dark Souls players, I'd say the game isn't fun for a good 60 to 70% of the time. When you're losing a game of League of Legends... Okay, that's a bad example. So, when you're feeling the impending crashing of the moon in Majora's Mask, that's not a great feeling, it's quite anxiety-inducing. And a lot of people at launch had a knee-jerk reaction to this time limit mechanic, probably because it made them feel emotions that they weren't expecting to feel from a Zelda game. They're negative emotions, but makes for a really good piece of art. These are all games with harsh, oppressive atmospheres, and gameplay that matches that tone. Of course there are fun parts in all of these games, but I wouldn't really call them the primary focus, yet they're also still acclaimed by critics and gamers alike. Metal Gear Solid 2. Fantastic game. Most of it sucks. I recently replayed it with a friend who knew absolutely nothing prior to starting it. He didn't even know that Raiden was a character. And he didn't really like it until the game showed off its full hand at the end. And now he can't get it out of his head. He was not having fun for a good 80% of that game, and he still thinks it's completely brilliant. It's also another game that was completely polarizing at launch, yet over the years has gained way more appreciation for what it does with interactive storytelling as a medium. You're more than welcome to tell me that all the games I've listed so far, you think suck. I can't really argue with that. But if you do like games similar to these ones and weren't feeling a stereotypical sense of fun with them, I want you to ask yourself why you enjoyed them in the first place. Or flip it around, ask yourself why you didn't enjoy a game that you should feel that sense of fun with. I've been wanting to make this video for a while now, since I've been told every week for the last year that I'm up my own ass for making this same point in my Hotline Miami 2 video.
God, this is as pretentious and self-indulgent as the game it's based on.
You're goddamn right.
But the thing that spurred me on to properly think out this concept of fun not equaling good is when I played a game called Gree a few days ago. It seemed like something I'd enjoy, especially since I was sick at the time and needed something just calm and simple and nice to look at. I'd heard it was a pretty artsy game, so I wasn't expecting it to be that mind-blowing or even that fun. But I was left frustrated and just completely bored out of my mind. And I wanted to distinguish for myself what I consider to be a not fun but good game and what I consider to just be a bad game. With Gree specifically, I got bored from the slow movement and tiring puzzles. The game failed to hook me within the first 2 hours, which I'd say is a pretty fair amount of time to give a game, especially one with quite a short playtime anyway. It wasn't fun, which is fine, but it wasn't immersive either. There was no real challenge or hook or anything really. I just didn't like it. And it's weird because I enjoy games like Proteus, which have less story and even less gameplay, but it works together for what it's trying to do way better than Gree. The graphics were nice and I could see how it was going for kind of a melancholic story and emotions being portrayed, but the gameplay did nothing to enhance those emotions, and it felt like the devs just chose 2D platformer as an arbitrary vessel for their art and story. Solve this boring puzzle and you get rewarded with some pretty visuals and story beats. And there are some games that have that separation and still work for me. I mean, Celeste does just that, but it's also a really well designed and fun game, so it doesn't have to combine its heavier story themes with the gameplay, which led me to realizing that it's a lot easier to make a good fun game than it is to make a good not fun game. I still think it's possible, but it's definitely a lot harder, which is also probably why this argument gets such a bad rap in the first place, because a lot of the not fun on purpose games kinda suck. And not because they're not fun, but because the creators that make it are just pretentious. It might sound like I'm circling around countering my own points, but no, I'm just trying to let everyone know that I'm a good art ho and I'm better than the rest of the art hoes. Of course it's easy to dismiss everything I'm saying with something like, well then no game is truly bad because Bubsy 3D makes me frustrated, and that's an emotion, which is where you have to take into account artistic intent and whether you really appreciate the emotion they're trying to convey. Note how I said appreciate and not like, because good art can stir up ugly feelings, and for some people that's just not their thing. But if the artist created that piece with the intention of making you feel sick, and you feel sick, they've done a good job. Which brings me all the way back to the original point I was trying to make in my Hotline Miami 2 video, but I don't think I explained well enough. I'll use the beard levels as an example because they do it best. The level design of these stages requires a playstyle that a lot of people didn't want to adopt. You have to be methodical and skittish. There are no power trips in these levels, and that's completely intentional. When you have just one enemy left and you don't know where he is, you feel genuine fear that he could pop up at any second and just instantly kill you, getting rid of all the progress you just made. The devastation of being killed and having all that progress lost is a necessary trade-off because the stakes need to be that high to feel that level of tension. Try to think of it in the same way that Majora's Mask's time limit is enforced on the player, and a lot of people didn't like it because it doesn't make me feel good, and games are supposed to make me feel good. I'd also like to take another moment to mention that Dark Souls does this exact same shit with its level design and enemy placement designed to keep you fearful, yet people praise that game because it's got an overly oppressive atmosphere from the get-go, instead of Hotline Miami 2, which tries to catch you off guard and makes you feel vulnerable. I just wanted to explain my point of view when it comes to this topic, and if this has cemented me as a pretentious art ho for games, it's fine, I guess. Wish I chose a different medium to be like this about, cause I'd just get pussy for saying this shit instead of ostracized. It's kinda sad that people shut themselves off from experiencing the full breadth of emotions this wonderful medium can offer. And I still really enjoy games that are made for pure fun. But I feel there's value to be had in experiencing and recognizing these other emotions, and I can't wait to see what games can do with them in the coming years. Please leave a comment down below because I really want to see everyone's opinion on this. I think it's such an interesting conversation. And if you think this video adds to the discussion in any way, please share it around as well. And if you've disagreed with every single thing I've said in the past 10 minutes, then I think we've got one thing we can all agree on, which is games are good. Catch you next time.